Welcome back to the Soul Warrior podcast. I'm Stephanie Perez, a licensed professional counselor, and in this space, we explore topics such as meaning, mindfulness, spirituality, existential mysteries, and the oddities of life that shape our souls. Let's explore what it means to feel, to be human, and to live in this wild thing we call life. Hey everyone, welcome back. Today's episode, we're going to be talking about why we forget what matters most. Well, in the last podcast, we talked about memory issues and the very mysterious thing about memory, like what even is it and why do we have it and all of that. So we're going to be talking about why we forget. Because that's also another function that we do. We forget things all the time. And some things we forget, we really don't want to be forgetting. And why is it that we can't remember the things that we really want to remember, but we seem to forget those things and we don't forget the things we really want to forget? Well, as we've mentioned before, a lot of what memory is a survival tactic. We're still trying to figure things out, learn for later storage. So our bodies are built on systems of safety, not necessarily pleasure. Perhaps forgetting is also a part of this survival technique. So let's talk about it. So have you ever noticed that the things you remember clearly, your values, your sense of self, what you actually need, those are often the things that end up feeling very fuzzy, distant, or like inaccessible. And meanwhile, your body remembers every single awkward fucking moment, every threat, every rejection. Like, why? Why does it do that? Like the memories I don't want to remember. I do not want to remember the embarrassing thing that happened to me in 8th grade in the middle school when we had this play that we had to do and made a complete fool of ourselves because we were unprepared. I don't want to remember that. Unfortunately, this is an accident. It's not a personal failure. It's just psychology, apparently. We all have this selective memory encoding based on emotional salience. In normal human language, your brain remembers what helped you survive, not what helped you become you. And I want to talk about why. So let's start here. So, as we remember from the previous podcast, memory is not a recording device, it's a survival tool. So, we like to think that memory exists to preserve truth, but neurologically, memory exists to preserve function. Your nervous system is not asking, what is meaningful? It's asking, what keeps me alive? It keeps me alive, detached, and regulated. That distinction matters more than people realize. Clinically speaking, emotional salience refers to how strongly an experience activates the limbic system, especially your amygdala. So, in other words, emotion will tell your brain, pay attention or die. Fear, shame, urgency, abandonment, like threat, those get prioritized. So, quiet meaning, subtle values, a slow realization that something isn't right, those don't scream loud enough. So people come into therapy and say things like, I don't know why I stayed so long. I don't know why I didn't trust myself. I don't even remember when I stopped feeling like myself. That's not denial. That's not stupidity. That's how salience works. The brain encodes intensity, not wisdom. So, like we may talk ourselves into something all we want. We can do all the preparatory, all the podcast, all the books, everything. And then you get yourself in that position and boom, it all gets wiped clean. What's most important comes first, and that's your survival. So let's talk about trauma. Clinically, trauma disrupts memory integration, specifically the hippocampus, this is the part that organizes memory into time, narrative, and meaning. It goes partially offline during threats. So that part's not going to really matter when a threat's here because you got to go straight to fight or flight. So that's why people remember like images without context. They remember emotions without the story involved all around. They may not remember the full perspective of the story. Body sensations, they'll remember those, but not really have explanation. So they just know something doesn't feel good. That's it. You know, this is why psychotherapy is helpful because sometimes when people go back in memory and they're invited to slow down to really explore that experience again with more adult eyes, you may actually pick up little pieces and details that you didn't think about the first time that really complete a full contextual story that you may not have considered before. So that's why someone can know something logically but not feel it emotionally. So like for example, I know that I'm safe now, like I know that it wasn't my fault. Like I know I deserve better, but the body has not yet updated. Sometimes those two things are not connected. Sometimes somebody may logically think something and know something, but the body needs to catch up, and vice versa, actually. Sometimes the body knows something that the mind needs to catch up to. So, this is depicted everywhere, the battle between the mind and the body, the brain and the heart. So the body hasn't updated yet, basically, because trauma memory is stored procedurally, not narratively. So, and that matters, you know, it matters. And sometimes meaning just hasn't yet been assigned, so that and meaning can change, you know, and often does throughout time, throughout someone's life, depending on wherever they're at in their life. So here's the part that most people don't really like to hear, though, that truth isn't always safe, especially in childhood, especially in dependency, especially in relationships where like attachment matters more than accuracy. So, for example, if you're a kid and your parent is being an asshole, sometimes it's safer to, not admit that truth to yourself than to admit it because you're in a circumstance that you need to survive. And maybe by turning a blind eye to certain things, that's what you really need to do. The body, especially as kids, they're amazing survivalists. I mean, you got to think what kinds of things they've had to survive through without anyone really telling them how to develop skills to do this. They just figure it out. They just do it. And damn you if you come in and tell me that I did something wrong. Where the fuck were you? Nobody showed me how to do it. I just had to do it myself. If anything, we deserve some credit for surviving in whatever manner in which way we had to. And and the problem is a lot of people grow up with this shame and guilt. And then when they realize things later in life, they're like, oh my God, how could I not have known? Shame on myself. But it's like, dude, you had to. You had to. It was survival. So truth is not always safe. Truth is not always safe. Clinically, we call this adaptive distortion. This is like basically you have to lie to yourself to survive. If the truth threatened connection, stability, or safety, the nervous system's going to deprioritize it. So people will forget their anger, they'll forget their intuition, they'll lie to themselves, they'll gaslight themselves, they'll overlook their own needs, they brush those under the rug. And, I'm sure many people out there can relate to that continuing to happen even into adulthood. So they'll even forget their sense of self, which is the hardest thing, the hardest thing. A lot of people don't even remember what that's like. So it's not because they're weak. I'm tired of that narrative. It's not because people are weak. They had to do what they had to do. Remembering would have cost too much at that time. So, and this is where meaning starts to fracture. So let me be very clear. Forgetting is often an act of intelligence, actually. Your brain did its job, defensive adaptation. Dissociation, which is really painful for a lot of people to go through, but sometimes that's all you got to do. Where can you go? If you can't run, if you can't hide, you just have to stay there. Like you're not going to allow yourself to have to sit through that excruciating state of being. You're going to dissociate. You're going to numb yourself, minimize it, over rationalize. The brain is powerful in its protection. It's powerful. These are not disorders first. They're strategies for survival first. They may become disorderly later, but because you're still doing it when you don't need to. But come on, cut yourself some slack. There's reasons. There's reasons for that. You just forget it. You forget it. You forget that you forgot. So Damn that forgetting function. It's so annoying sometimes, but, like I said, it's protection. They could become problems later when the danger's past, but the system doesn't know it yet. This is why people say, "I don't know who I am anymore. I feel disconnected. I feel empty. I feel like I'm watching my life instead of living it." Those types of things, that's not random. That's not random. It's what happens when survival outlives its usefulness. When you forget what mattered, you don't just lose those memories, you lose orientation. Like meaning comes from memory. Identity comes from continuity. And dissociation happens when continuity breaks. If memory is fragmented, meaning becomes unstable. If meaning is unstable, well, identity feels hollow. So, that's not pathology. That's just a sequence of events that's going to happen. So, for now, I just want you to sit with this. You didn't forget because you didn't care. You forgot because caring became dangerous, basically. And healing is not necessarily about digging up memories aggressively. Memory reconsolidation requires a state of safety there. It's not like you just got to go in there and dig up things and talk about them. Like you need to create an environment where your body can learn how to trust again. Because in those memories, your body was not safe. So what you're doing is you're not just like writing a biography and spelling out your life's history. You're digging up memories that you did not feel safe in at some point, and you're visiting them in a state of safety to reprocess your mind into realizing what safety can feel like and what it would have felt like in those moments. And that's how healing works. That's how memory gets reconsolidated. That's how your body learns how to trust again, learns how to trust yourself again. And then, slowly meaning returns. Identity starts to return in a really gentle way. You used to really feel confident again and remember who you are, not through force, but through regulating yourself by calming down, by remembering that you're safe, that you can trust yourself. So sometimes, that can look like a body reaction, values resurfacing, sudden clarity about like what you won't tolerate no more. And then change starts to happen in your own life. And it's funny because you realize like you're the one making those changes. Like you maybe had hoped the universe would somehow make them for you, but in the end, you're the one doing it. And you're the only one that really needed to in the first place. You just needed to remember that the power was always yours in the first place. If you've forgotten that parts of yourself, like your truth, your direction, your meaning, don't ask like, what's wrong with me? But ask like, what did I need to survive? How did I use this? How and why? What was so bad about my life that I resorted to this survival tactic? And if anything, give yourself some credit, give yourself some praise. That was a very clever way to do it. I mean, kids are kind of cool if you think about it. Without even being told, like they learn everything about life and they learn how to survive it. They're actually our leaders in survival. The kids, our inner child, are usually the ones that are that where we learn everything. All our tactics, all our approaches to life, all our survival techniques, they all developed then. And we're still doing it today. I mean, we can correct it, but that's going to be our default. Even if we get better at emotional regulation, if things just really crash, our fireman parts in IFS is what they call them, the ones that come in and wreck shop just to get you through to safety. Those are like our inner child strategies. They did the best thing for us. So it's not about changing it all the time. I mean, yeah, that could be helpful in circumstances, but a lot of times it's really just about accepting that that's who you are. That's what's happened. That's where you got to start now, because it's really about healing your inner relationship with yourself and stop getting down on yourself for doing some of these things. Like there's reasons why you did it. So yeah, so give yourself a break and cut yourself some slack. If forgetting once protected you, remember how now requires safety, requires safety. So that's kind of key. You have to give yourself a safe environment. That's what you're looking for, and that's what you're striving for, to be honest. Until you can tell your body that you're safe in that time, if you're safe now, then that allows your body to relax. Sometimes the most human thing you can do is stop blaming yourself for what your nervous system did to keep you alive, basically. In other words, just love yourself. It always comes down to self love, doesn't it? Just love yourself. Really. Stop being so mean to yourself. You know, people come to see me all the time, and I'm like, dude, just stop being so mean to yourself. Shut up. Stop. I want to like go in your mind and defend you for you. Um, Basically, what we're recognizing is that we remember certain things and we forget other things, and sometimes forgetting things is important for us to do. It's a survival technique. And sometimes it's just to kind of throw stuff away, stuff that you don't really need, like if something's not important, if it's really not here to help you strategize for survival, then it's going to be more prone to being forgotten as well. So sometimes forgetting could be protective, and sometimes forgetting is just because, well, you don't really need it anymore. You just learn to forget because storing that information sometimes it's kind of more like a broken record. Like you're kind of just like, I can't let this go. I need to keep listening to this. And even though keeping that memory alive may seem like it's for a good cause, like you're also kind of allowing yourself to live in the past, if you know what I mean. So it's just something to think about. A lot of people, when they, for example, go through loss, they lose a loved one, a family member, and there are multiple stages of grief. Of course, I'm not going to get into that. That could be talked at another a podcast sesh. But when somebody goes through grief, one of the hardest stages is one of the last stages, which is allowing the self to move on, to really finally let go, because this stage is really fearful. And the reason why is because what it comes down to is people don't want to forget. There's a huge fear that they're going to forget. They're going to forget this loved one. They're going to forget the pain that they have been leaning in to remind them how much they love this person or how important this relationship was to them. And the idea and notion of forgetting is just deafening. Nobody wants to do that. Like, you can't forget somebody. Like, I have to keep them alive. And culturally, a lot of cultures out there will do that. Like Dia de los Muertos, people will keep their family members alive by remembering them and passing them down generations, like in a way to really keep that. So we're not saying that forgetting is something you have to do all the time. Sometimes it's not always a choice is what I'm saying, but another thing is like, I guess depending on what is needed for you, like what I have noticed is, for example, somebody may forget somebody, but what they're actually forgetting is more so like the pain that's caused there. And so then that person's not always on their mind as much. But I mean, if I start talking to you about somebody that you lost years ago, you're still going to be able to recall them. You're going to like they'll shoot right to your memory. So it's not like you threw that memory file in the trash. Like it's there. You can recall it, and every time you recall it, you can also recall those feelings. The emotions will come straight through right then and there. So it's fresh. You never lose that. It's there. I think people just are afraid that if they stop thinking about something for a long time, that means that they're gonna lose the memory entirely, like in Inside Out when a lot of those childhood memories were just gone. And maybe to some degree that's true, but I guess, like, certain significant things you can always recall, but other things maybe that just become, like, obsolete, you just tend to forget. So the brain can work as like a computer where it'll clean out a lot of the old files that you just haven't touched in a very, very long time, and maybe put it in like a trash can bin or something. And then it'll stay in there for a long time just to make sure you don't ever need that. And then it'll delete it entirely kind of thing. And then it's gone. completely gone. There's probably lots of things that have happened in your life that are gone, like day to day. And then there are some people out there that just have crazy ass memory, like memories that they consider to be a curse. They remember every single detail of every single day, like savants. And you would think, oh, that would be amazing. I remember you know how much I can do with that? Photographic memory, be able to like recall things from when I was like 5 years old. I would love that. But you'd be surprised, because if you ever talk to people that have that type of sharp memory, they often see it as like a curse. They can't get over things. It's always there, always on the mind whenever they're around people. If somebody does them dirty, they won't ever be able to let that go. And so therefore they struggle in relationships, because as soon as somebody does them wrong, they just can't forget it. And so sometimes, like I said, forgetting can be a helpful thing for relationships. Um, just forgetting the little things that are unnecessary. Because if you remember everything, they start to pile on, and you can't, that's all you see. So, I guess like it kind of just begs the question, is like, where does memory go? Maybe there's backup file systems. Maybe there's, the file systems that are closer, and then you can put them in the reserves and the files and in the backup files. Who knows? Because, I don't know, if you really do focus, if you really do slow down, you probably can recall things. I mean, I don't know if anybody here has heard of past life regression meditations, where people can remember their past lives and stuff, like just because they really slow down and go into focus mode. So, are things really lost? But then again, is it even really memory? Remember? Is it even really memory? What is it? What is it? So do we need it? Do we not need it? Just some things to think about. So I think we'll just stop it there. It was great talking to y'all about that. It's an interesting topic as always, especially one for me, because I struggle with memory. And so I like to talk about how it's okay. Anyway, take care and have a great one. Until next time. Thanks for listening. If you found today's episode helpful, feel free to share it with others exploring mindfulness, presence, and self-discovery. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Feel free to leave comments, reflections, or even suggestion topics you'd like to hear in future episodes. Mindfulness isn't about being perfectly calm. It's about noticing what's happening internally and externally, even when things feel uncomfortable or messy. For more reflections, check out my upcoming blog, Mindfulness Does Not Equal Calm. Until next time, take care and stay present.